Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fifth session of the Coffee with the IA webinar series. We are pleased to be joined by Reece Andrews this morning. He is the winner of the 2021 Innovator Award, and we're excited to hear from him about his work and the innovation he is bringing to the irrigation industry. This is again the fifth session. We have one more session next week that we hope you'll join us for on Tuesday, November 2nd at 11 a.m., where we'll hear from the incoming IA president, John Newland, who will be becoming a new president at the Irrigation Show in December. But this is our final awards interview, and we are also proud to have Hunter Senninger be a sponsor of the IA Awards program. And we do have a short snippet video from Hunter Senninger that I will show right now before we move on.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. Despite the challenges of the past year, our commitment to innovation and customer support is stronger than ever. As a leading manufacturer of landscape irrigation and outdoor lighting solutions, we're working hard to meet the complex needs of today's market. To our valued customers and the industry at large, our partnership remains. While we can't connect face-to-face, we'll be with you every step of the way to provide the products, tools, and training you need to succeed. Thank you for supporting Hunter Industries and FX Luminaire.
Once again, thank you to Hunter Senninger for being a sponsor of the IA Awards program and helping to make this webinar series happen. So now we can move on. Then we are welcoming Reece Andrews, who is the winner of the 2021 Innovator Award. Reece is a product manager for Lindsay Corporation and has led the development of numerous industry advancing technologies during his career, which resulted in a number of products that have significantly supported growers in improving the health of their crops while conserving natural resources. His work in developing remote pivot technologies has helped growers save water and reduce fuel costs while also reducing their carbon footprint. Two of his irrigation control systems he was directly responsible for were also winners of the 2007 and 2014 IA New Product Contest. The IA Innovator Award honors individuals who have made significant, tangible contributions to the irrigation industry, and he is clearly deserving of this award. So now I'd like to please welcome IA's president, Brian Winan, and the 2021 Innovator Award recipient, Reece Andrews.
Coleman, I appreciate that. Hello, Reece. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Brian.
Well, let me welcome you and congratulate you on the Innovator Award. What an honor it must be to receive that award. A lot of people have ideas in the irrigation business. I know I've been in it 40 years and I think of things all the time. Gee, if they would just do this. You've actually put these to use, and obviously great use in saving water as well, which is what we're all working to do, is to use that precious resource better. You know, early in your education, ironically, we sought out the same degree, both in the business degree. Can you tell me a little bit about how you ended up in agricultural irrigation and then in working with the irrigation industry?
Yes, thank you, Brian. As a kid, I grew up in small towns, numerous small towns, none of which had a population of over 800 people. So I was raised around farming and ranching really all my life, and would help family and friends on their farms. So I got to see firsthand how hard farmers work and the hours that they put in. That really, in my opinion, shaped my perspective of the farmer's work life. And it created a huge amount of respect for these great people. And when I was in high school, I lived only 7 miles from Lindsay, Nebraska, which is the origins of Lindsay Manufacturing, now Lindsay Corp, which has since relocated the corporate office to Omaha. So I started my career almost literally out of high school in 1988. I worked on the production line. And while doing so, I went to college at night. Within a year, at Lindsay, I became an industrial engineering technician, where I worked on various projects that would streamline manufacturing processes by using technology and being an innovative thinker to, to help the production workers become more productive. And I think that shaped me in a way. But on top of that, one of my extra roles is that I was a tour guide for customers that came in for factory tours. Back then, when growers would buy equipment, it was really popular to go tour the factory at which you bought the equipment from. So I got the opportunity to just do dozens and dozens of tours a year while I was working in industrial engineering. I enjoyed those interactions with customers so much that I really jumped at the chance when a product management job came up in 1997, and I felt I could really position myself and what I was doing in the factory to hopefully make a difference in the lives of growers and the Zematic dealers. And that's really kind of how I got that start.
Oh, that's great that the tours led into that. Now, throughout your time in the industry, you've seen a lot of different changes in the irrigation technologies and the increase in technology. You work with farmers. I grew up on a farm as well for my younger days, working on a farm. But anyway, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome in order to get some of the new technology out in the field and get it to be used?
I was talking about those factory tours earlier, and once I became a product manager, I went from I wasn't giving the tours anymore, but at the conclusion of the tours, I'd give a presentation on technology. And what struck me early on was the features and benefits of remote control of irrigation, benefits such as reducing trips to the field, less wear and tear on vehicles, lower labor costs, lower risk, just that general overall peace of mind. Were actually deemed as nice to haves, back in the late 90s versus must haves. And so the adoption at first was slow, but I think there was some things that we did early on when we developed our products that maybe helped increase this adoption. One of the things that we prioritized as we developed new products initially was having a huge emphasis on easy use. Trying to create innovations that were very intuitive. I'll give you an example. One of the controllers that we developed in the mid 2000s was called a vision panel, and we based the user interface around things that people used on a daily basis. So flip phones were popular back then, and if you remember the flip phone, it had that dial in the middle that had the up down arrow left right. The enter was in the middle of that. TV remote controls, satellite remote controls. So on a daily basis, people were used to using that type of a thing. And that's how we designed a keypad around the vision panel. So it became very simple for growers and kind of set the stage for, in the industry, a controller that had the greatest amount of ease of use. Another thing that we would do as we developed products is we wouldn't try to reinvent the wheel in some cases. And here's what I mean by that. If growers have tools on them already that we can take advantage of, we would do that. If I start really early, back when we had a product called an RMAC, we called it the talking pivot. CB radios were popular back then, and having the ability to, start and stop your pivot, actually get a response, a talking response over a CB radio. So it was using a tool that people already knew how to use. And we leveraged that with remote control. And then later on, as we got into our cloud-based control systems, I would see, other industries would go ahead and they try to put their software on a custom-made tablet. We looked at that and said, let's use the tools that people have, their smartphones, so they're not carrying a separate piece of technology around that they probably don't want to, be messing with. But I think the third element is probably the most important, and that was, I think the success factor at that adoption really came with demonstrating success. And so I think the ultimate part of innovations getting utilized the way they should is where a person can, find that benefit and experience that benefit that actually has an impact on their work-life balance. I have been able to witness on several occasions with growers that aha moment where the customer, used a solution, experienced the benefit, and that nice to have went to a must have. And matter of fact, I can't live without it type of thing, Brian.
You brought up the aha moment. You were telling me a story about meeting with a grower who wasn't sure about using a smartphone to run his irrigation. And if you tell that story, it was a great story.
Yeah. So, and it was an older, gentleman that was using remote control for the first time and would try it and would then proceed to hop in the truck and run out to the field and it was like, oh, it is working. And anyway, one day, and this was back with the talking pivot technology. Apparently, the span cable was getting cut, and it was creating like little shorts in the system, and this grower was getting these call outs from the pivot, but it would only like play a half a message and stop, and then call out again and play half a message and stop, and he ran out to the field and found that somebody was trying to steal the span cable and cutting up the cable, and was one day in a cafe saying, I'm using this technology, and it was calling me because somebody was stealing my span cable, but it just didn't know what to say. So it was kind of a funny experience that we overheard one day in just a local cafe, but nonetheless, somebody using technology for remote control and getting a benefit out of it.
Now, what would you tell our listeners or viewers about someone who doesn't know a lot about agriculture irrigation? What are the misconceptions that you would want to correct about agriculture irrigation?
I think if you drive by a field and you see a center pivot, you see a lot of iron, you see a lot of metal, tires, and I think that modern irrigation has really provided a huge number of solutions, and they're very outcome-driven solutions, to achieve greater water use efficiency using precision technologies. I mean, just to name a couple things, pivots can be a low-pressure system that allow for smaller, more energy-efficient pumps, whether they be a generator or you're hooked up to commercial power, being able to lower the consumption of energy or fuel. There's also variable rate irrigation that we call VRI, which is the ability to individually control a sprinkler. So you might have a quarter-mile system where every sprinkler can be controlled on or off. And then there's irrigation scheduling tools that provide growers exactly how much water to apply, where to apply that water, when to apply that water. And not many people know, when you tell them that almost every new pivot that's purchased today has GPS on it. But I think the most important part about irrigation, and people may not know this, is that, of all the agricultural equipment available to farmers, the center pivot actually has the greatest impact on the outcome of producing a quality crop and maximizing yield. So, especially ensuring that crop is getting the proper amount of water, not too much, not too little, during a critical growth stage where yield is, largely determined in how that crop produces, the best outcome for that season. And, so, pivots of all the equipment that a farmer can purchase will typically have the best ROI.
Yeah, and that kind of led into the next question. What, with all the producers, we want them to be profitable and believe ag irrigation can help accomplish this. But the industry is facing challenges. How can advancements and innovation like you've been involved with help make the industry and ultimately agriculture more sustainable in the long term?
I estimate that using remote monitoring can reduce trips to the field by about 50 to 75%. And for maybe those in the audience that want to better understand what I mean by trips to the field, is that when a a grower is turning on irrigation systems and has multiple irrigation systems. I mean, they literally, I mean, these are big machines, with in terrain and mud, they can get stuck. And so you drive around checking on them, once, twice, 3 times a day. You can put a lot of miles on a vehicle. So if you can ensure that your pivots are running with remote monitoring, this benefit reduces labor costs. It cuts down on the amount of fuel, the cost of fuel, wear and tear. It reduces wear and tear on the truck. Produces a better carbon footprint. So, the latest innovation you're referring to is what we call the Fieldnet Pivot Watch, which is our low-cost, universal center pivot monitoring solution. And so this product resolves a previously unfilled gap in that it is a truly affordable, easy to install, easy to use method of remotely monitoring, any brand, any age center pivot that's out there. So, in another application for a Fieldnet Pivot Watch is operators that lease pivots. It's estimated that around 30% in the U.S. of all center pivots are leased, and so many of these operators can't justify full control because number one, it's the system, they don't own it. They may only operate that pivot or in that field for a couple of years. So they face the challenge of either convincing the landlord to make investments in technology on that pivot, or the Pivot Watch can offer this segment just a low-cost portable solution so that they can reap the efficiencies gained with remote monitoring. And as they rotate from pivot to pivot, they can take that technology with them. And so the bottom line breakthrough for the Pivot Watch is that it really starts the path towards remote control. So Pivot Watch is remote monitoring, but it starts the path towards remote control. And so why is this important? Pivot Watch helps drive adoption of remote control within that customer segment that was previously unwilling to try telemetry solutions. And so once a grower finds value in a monitor only solution, then the next level to where they can even have greater benefit, the ability to remotely control, provides that path then for even increasing that productivity even more and providing even a greater utilization and efficient use of resources.
Yeah, do you find, especially in agriculture, irrigation and agriculture itself, we talked before about different generations. You've got an older generation who might still be on the family farm, but then you've got possibly the son or even the grandson now that is stepping into the family farm, looking possibly for this technology. Can you relate some of that to us, how that affects how you approach this?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and it's not only part of that work-life balance, but when you talk generations, I think it's an excellent way of connecting generations. So, you might have on a farm, people contributing, granddad's contributing, dad, the son, and obviously the son's probably going to be more inclined to using technologies to operate the irrigation systems, but the grandpa just might enjoy taking a road trip and periodically going out to pivots. And so getting back to that ease of use capability, when we develop the controller part of it that's in the field with Fieldnet technology connected to it, part of the thought process we put into it is the people going out to the field just want something easy from an operational standpoint, turn the pivot on, off, try to have equipment that you can make every system look and feel the same. In 2015 we came out with the Fieldnet pivot control, where the user interface, regardless of the type of system you were on in the field, was the same, and it was simple and easy to use. But then there are some of the growers, dad and the son, may hardly ever go out to that pivot, and they're operating it completely through remote control. So it's really a good way to, everybody can stay involved, everybody can feel like they're contributing to the the irrigation management, but all might be using a different method on how they accomplish the goal that makes them, feel the best, but it connects those generations together, and it doesn't, create a technology that all of a suddenly excludes somebody that just wants to be part of that process.
Well, and I think the big thing, we all admire farmers. We all know that they grow the food that we eat. But I think that, and you've mentioned this before, I think the big thing is that their lives were usually wrapped around what they had to do on the farm. And then sometimes their family life may not have been everything that some of the new fathers want today. So they might be driving around checking their rigs or making sure the irrigation's working or the crops, where today now with your technology, they might be able to go to more of their sons' baseball games or school events and be able to check it right from their phone.
Yes. And I think, and that's where earlier on where I said one of the biggest benefits of the adoption is actually experiencing then the benefit. And you're right. You get really busy. I was talking about the hours, when I was helping family and friends, the hours that are put into that. And, so, being able to go to a daughter's softball game, or, maybe watch your son pitch a no-hitter for the very first time, because you can actually sit up there in those bleachers and monitor your irrigation system. At the same time, you're getting to experience, the family activities. Or I remember one gentleman actually got into coaching, and it was the first time he could even make time to get into coaching, a passion of his, coaching young people how to play, play sports. So there's a lot to using technology to really help, I guess, create that better, life and being able to be around family, participate in, church activities or whatever it is that you have as a hobby that, kind of gets beyond that work element.
Yeah, I mean, it's great on the big farms, but I think it'll help the younger generation also maybe stay on the family farm as well, because they can see where they can have more of a life and be able to use this technology to do everything they need to do in order to keep their crops in a good harvest. So
and over the year, I was just going to mention, over the years, Brian, I have heard exactly what you just said, and where maybe the technology was still a nice to have for a particular grower, but they said, hey, we're going to make a commitment to add technology to make irrigation easier, because I'd like to have a family member stay on the farm and continue to farm this, and this will just help make it easier, more fun, and more effective for them.
Oh yeah, yeah, a lot of new technologies in agriculture. So tell me, Reese, what drives you to continuing to innovate right now? What's driving Reese?
There's probably a couple things. Number one, it's so exciting to be part of innovating products and services that, at a global level, in this industry that literally feeds the world. And from those plant tours that I did, and just the dealers in this industry and the customers in this industry are just the salt of the earth, and just the greatest people you can be around, and the impact that they have on on the world is amazing, and being part of that is very rewarding. But on top of that, I think being part of Lindsay Corporation for 33 years, and Lindsay has a customer first innovation culture. It means that I'm surrounded by, and have been surrounded by, great people that are all aligned to the mission, and it's really a family. And we consider our dealers and customers as part of that extended family. So, it's really easy for us to be driven, to do what's right and keep moving forward.
And before we end the interview, is there anybody you want to say thank you to, or that helped contribute to you being able to receive this award?
I think first and foremost, Emily Hardy within Lindsay's actually, put in the application for this, and so her hard work. If you don't apply for it, you're not going to get it right. And I think that, just everybody I've been surrounded with over the years in terms of, working with customers and, even the customers themselves and bringing their voice into what we do for products. I couldn't be any happier with, with how things, turned out over the years, dealers making a commitment, to it. And, like I said, when it started out as that the technology was a nice to have, and it took a lot of people working together and communicating with each other to turn those nice to haves into must haves and technology that they can't live without because it helps them live better.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, thank you very much. And Coleman, back to you.
I do actually have one question for you, Reese, if you humor me.
Sure.
You mentioned, things from, remote monitoring to remote control of irrigation systems. I'm relatively new to the Irrigation Association, just a handful of months. So what can I expect? What's the next innovation? What's the next problem that ag irrigation is trying to solve that you're working on that we can see?
I think the broader challenges that face agriculture industry as a whole are pretty well known. Is that, we're balancing, the needs of farmers to grow more food, more fiber to support a growing population. Like I mentioned, they feed the world, while they still have to maintain a profitability, ensuring sustainability, of the land and the water for the next generation of farmers to come. And so it's probably two things. Number one, I see the challenge or the opportunity of continue to develop technologies that innovate, that drive that, as you were saying, that drive that continued adoption from, solutions that, today we kind of approximate that about 2/3 of center pivots don't have any telemetry installed on them. So if we can keep increasing the adoption, from monitoring and control to then adding irrigation scheduling tools and keep moving things upwards, will increase the adoption and equate to, sustainability benefits. And it starts with monitoring like the Fieldnet Pivot Watch, and then moving into the control and the more advanced irrigation technologies, to where if you get on the top of the pyramid, it means you're using irrigation scheduling tools and you're using variable rate irrigation and really maximizing, the savings of water and placement of fertilizer. The second part is that, right now there's a great focus on, machine health and saving growers time and maximizing the uptime of the center pivots. And Lindsay's making some great strides in the development of what we call the smart pivot, which provides growers, even additional time saving benefits by monitoring the performance of the center pivot, by monitoring the conditions in the field, detecting irrigation anomalies that could yield that could impact yields or waste resources. And if those things can be preventable by having a smarter irrigation system, then you're even taking it the next step in terms of more efficient use of water, reducing waste, and using our resources in the most effective way possible, and at the same time, saving those growers time so they can really concentrate on important things.
Great. So it sounds like it's as much new technologies that may come as just getting everyone to the top of that pyramid, so it's not narrow at the top.
Correct.
Well,
yep.
Reese, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, congratulations on you receiving this award. For those in the audience, we do have one more session next Tuesday, November 2nd, where we are going to hear from the incoming IA president, John Newland. He will be speaking to the current IA president. So we hope you'll be able to join us, and everyone have a great morning.
Thank you, Coleman. Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, everybody.